Hey, what's up? So I've got the Ford Mustang Mach 1 this week, and since I'm out of school because I'm a teacher, I figured I wanted to kind of take it for a real drive and really put it through its paces. And Ford was like, yeah, go have fun with that. But under no circumstances should you ever take it to a racetrack.
Don't worry, Ford. I'm just kidding, sort of. I mean, I only got one speeding ticket while I was up there.
It's true.
So while I'm checking to make sure that my license is still valid in this state and most others, why don't we focus on the driving portion of the review? Because, I mean, that's what you're all really here for, right? To know how this thing drives.
So if you're from Atlanta, you know that there's, I would call it, to be charitable, a semi-famous Chevron station just outside of Dahlonega, Georgia. And inadvertently, because today is about the most perfect day you could ever hope to have for running the mountains, specifically Blood Mountain and the Richard B. Russell Parkway, there is a large group of cars here. This is sort of a staging point, and this is actually not what I intended for the beginning of this drive, but I saw them all sort of racking up here, and I thought, you know, we definitely want to pull over and take a look because they are planning on running the mountain probably a lot harder than I am because I'm trying to make a YouTube video, but it's definitely a cool group, a cool hangout, and a really cool gathering spot for anyone who's interested in mountain driving safely and responsibly. Well, that was a pretty fun group, and I have no doubt that we'll be seeing them again. But considering the work we have to do with the Mustang here, I think it's best that we not join the insanely fast BMW M2 competition in Lotus and just sort of stick to our own speed, although it looked like a lot of fun. So if you're new to the channel, I live in Atlanta, and the cool thing about Atlanta is that about an hour and a half north of Atlanta are some of the most epic driving roads in the Southeast United States, namely Blood Mountain and the Richard B. Russell. I know they're kind of a local hangout. I don't think I'm spoiling anything by telling you that, but it does take about an hour and a half to get up here. So how does the Mach 1 handle the sort of relaxed drive to the mountains, not just the roads in the mountains? Well, first off, it is extremely comfortable. You've got multi-position magnetic shocks. You've got the ability to fine-tune not just the ride, but the transmission and the steering. It is a very comfortable highway cruiser, absolutely. One complaint I will say is that the seats are incredibly comfortable. However, as we were getting into more curvy roads in the mountains, you feel like you are sitting a little higher up. In a price range sort of comparison, this thing is about the same as the Toyota Supra and obviously its Camaro counterparts, the 1LE and stuff like that. And I feel like you sit a little higher. The seats are incredibly comfortable, and the driving position for someone my height at 6'6" is perfection, but you're definitely sort of, getting on the dirt bikes up here. You're definitely sort of on the comfortable end of the spectrum. In track driving, you might find yourself feeling a little tippy, I would say. Also, by the way, this used to be a motorcycle dealership. It was called Riders Hill, and now it is apparently the Etowah Meadery and brewery, and there's a winery, so like that's cool. Don't worry, Ford, I'm not indulging because that would be irresponsible, and we are going to some incredible roads. All right, so here's the plan. I'm gonna roll out in the Mustang. We're gonna hit a couple of the kind of really good roads coming up. I'm not gonna do an in-car yet because I wanna see how crowded the mountain is, and I don't wanna be trying to talk to camera or something like that. So I'm gonna do a little recap, probably when we get to the top of Blood Mountain, because that's where we'll get a real sense of how crowded the mountain is. It is literal perfection today, so I imagine it's gonna be a fairly crowded day on the mountain, and that's okay, totally expected, but I'm just gonna kind of modify as we go. So I'll recap sort of the handling stuff at the top. I'm gonna get some B-roll footage of the drive during my sort of afternoon up here, and if it lightens up and I can do an in-car where I can kind of give you guys some feedback while we're on the sort of curvy mountain roads, I will. But I don't wanna take my initial run talking to camera when there could be a lot of bikes and sports cars around. So meet me at the top of the mountain and let's see how this goes. All right, let's unpack that run because two things stood out to me. One, amazingly, I hit almost zero traffic on that run, which is pretty insane considering how crowded the mountain is today. It is a gorgeous day in North Georgia, so I don't know how I made it all the way up Blood Mountain, arguably the most famous driving road around here, and hit no traffic, but I did. Secondly, holy crap. This thing is so much more than I thought it was going to be. I honestly thought it was going to be a Mustang GT that had, you know, a little bit more oomph to it or whatever. But this thing, the turn in, the 10-speed automatic, I don't know if I've mentioned it at this point in the video, but unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your preference, this thing is rocking the 10-speed automatic, and it was faultless coming up the mountain. I mean, I would prefer the manual for sure, but this 10-speed, it was nailing the downshifts. It's not maybe quite as telepathic as the Supra ZF 8-speed, but it did an incredible job and let me focus on kind of navigating the mountain for the first time. The suspension in sport mode, I kept it in sport mode because if you go full track mode, it turns off the stability control, and I ain't playing that game with Ford's loaner car. The suspension was incredible. In fact, I would say, and this is true, I think that the suspension was too good, too comfortable because I was building speed at an incredibly rapid pace thanks to the 480 horsepower Coyote V8, and maybe more than I intended because I wanted to take that first run a little more relaxed than I ended up taking it, but it was because of the confidence that I got from the car. It was giving me good feedback. Also, the Michelin Pilot Sport 4s have all the grip you need on the road. To have any more grip on the road would honestly be dangerous and stupid. It would goad you into kind of doing more Mustang-y stereotypical things, and that's not what you want to do. I felt like the turn-in was solid. The front end, I actually tried to get it to push a little bit at times when there was nobody around me, and it just wouldn't. It just gripped and said, give me the gas pedal and let's get up this mountain. So very, very impressive for the first time up. If you want to go back and look at how the sort of Ecoboost 4-cylinder handled this, go check out my older video with that. This thing literally would have destroyed it on this same road, for context. Need to recalibrate a little bit here. Up on top of the Richard B. Russell, which is one of the best driving roads in the state of Georgia, with my new friend Carl, who drives the black Mustang. Hold on, sun's destroying me. And to give you an idea of how fast the Mustang is and what it's capable of doing, Carl wanted to follow along to the photo spot. We did that and promptly both got speeding tickets because that's Mustang life. These guys here are living Corvette life, doing some fast passes on top of the mountain because that is what this glorious day is all about. So, some thoughts on round 2 with the Mustang post speeding ticket. right, first things first, this thing builds speed incredibly rapidly and incredibly smoothly. That's probably one of the #1 characteristics. As someone who's coming from the sort of LS family, there goes an RCF with that glorious Toyota V8. God, I love it up here. I love it. If you live in Atlanta and you have not been up here and just enjoyed the car culture, what are you even doing? Like, seriously, get up here immediately. Anyway, this thing builds speed so smoothly and so rapidly that by the time you're at the 7,500 RPM red line, you are going way, way too fast, as we most definitely found out. But the cool thing about that is it just feels like it has this sort of never-ending wave. It's very different from the Supra's sort of savage quickness off the line. The Coyote V8 just has more of a tidal wave of power as it sweeps up to that high RPM, and it is immensely satisfying winding that thing out and listening to it in contrast with all the different V8s that are out here right now. These guys have a drone up doing fast flybys here with the collection of cars that they have. It's pretty awesome. Also, the weather just went from perfection to a typical Georgia mountain heat oven. So my Northern European complexion is melting like soft serve ice cream. So I've had a few more minutes to sort of unpack the Mach 1's performance, and I think if you're looking at this, you got to look at it sort of in practicality terms, and that's how I always approach things as an enthusiast dad. So I'm up here in the mountains in what would be my only car, right? This would be my daily driver. And from that sort of usability and performance perspective, this has to be one of the absolute most usable yet still fun sort of daily driver enthusiast cars. I mean, you've got this roaring kind of buzzsaw of a V8 engine. You've got enough space, you've got a decent trunk, and you've got a really comfortable ride when you're not doing anything too crazy. And here's the other thing about the Mach 1. This car has all of the performance that you really realistically need. As you've already seen and heard, it very easily can get you into trouble up here. And so if you're looking at this sort of $50,000 price range, and you're looking at a car that could give almost any car up here a run for its money, and anything beyond that, you should take it to the track. And I think if you're looking for a car to do this type of thing, this is about as perfect as it gets. Also, if you're being realistic with yourself, and I always try to be, ask yourself this one very important question. Are you actually going to take this car to the track? If you're being honest with yourself, for a lot of people, the answer is probably no. In which case, this thing will do more than fine.
But what about in normal mode? I mean, if you own this car, it's probably your only car. And so in normal mode, the way this thing functions is just as important as all the fun stuff. And I think this is where the Mach 1 sort of has an advantage over some of its direct competitors, namely cars like the Camaro SS1LE or the Toyota Supra. Driving it in normal mode, I have the transmission set to normal, I have the suspension, the exhaust, the steering, everything set to normal or comfort. And the road that I live off of actually is in the process of being repaved, and right now the magnetic shocks are soaking up the bumps. In fact, the harshness of some of the half-paved, half-unpaved parts of the road is being dispatched very well by a combination of the excellent Michelin Pilot Sport 4s and the compliant suspension. And there's just enough of an exhaust rumble to let me know, and everyone else know around me, that I'm driving a Mach 1 and that it's a special Mustang. But I really like the daily usability of this car. The seat is very comfortable. It is not the, most grippy seat, but if you are a larger person like me, sometimes you don't need the most grippy seat because I can sort of hold myself in position just on virtue of my enormous size. Also, you can see the driving position with the steering wheel is about as good as it could possibly be. I have the lumbar turned up to be very comfortable. I love the digital dash. I love the gauge readout, the clarity of the gauges. I have it in sport mode. I like to switch it between sport and comfort. Sport's probably my favorite. And in general, the Mustang Mach 1 is a very pleasant place to be. Also, before we get to the handling road, I will point out that the interior of the Mach 1 is exhibiting none of the sort of concerning creakiness and groaniness of the Supra's interior in very similar Georgia weather. So that's a plus. I'm not saying the materials are quite as nice, but I'm impressed by the build quality, I guess you would say. Good job, Ford. Now, as we approach the handling road on this relatively sort of straight 2-lane suburban road, the Mach 1's ride comfort is notable. I will say that the car has a tendency to wander a little bit. I noticed that on the highway as well. You have to be a little more persistent in keeping the car kind of in its lane when you're just cruising down the road. I don't know if that's a function of the Michelins or whatever, but like, you know, the Supras and Camaros wear equally aggressive rubber, and I haven't necessarily noticed it in that, so it's not like a deal breaker or anything. Turning onto the handling road, we're gonna go over this first bumpy patch here to see how the suspension in comfort, I have everything still set to comfort, handles this type of sort of poorly maintained pavements. Coming up to this first stretch, right about here, the Mustang is, wow, very well controlled over that stretch of road. In fact, it was comfortable and it got the body right back into control, sort of taking care of business without throwing me around. That first curve is, you know, interesting in less capable cars, not really interesting in this one. This part with the bigger undulations, not really a problem. I mean, you're aware this is a sporty car, but like, this road can be very discombobulated for a unsorted suspension like the Ford Ranger. And the Mustang Mach 1 is exhibiting no such issues. Big bump? Oh, wow. That was like nothing. Little bit of jitteriness that I would associate with a sporty car, but like, guys, this is a very livable car. Basically what I'm saying is that you could drive this car every day, whatever your commute is, whether it's mostly highway, whether it's mostly suburban roads or rural roads, you could drive this car every day, and it is very comfortable and pleasant place to be. I would almost argue maybe you don't need the handling pack. I mean, I imagine you're gonna get more life out of the Pilot Sport 4s, and they are pretty darn good. I mean, they have quite a bit of give to them. Combined with the comfort mode of this suspension, God, that flatbed truck was completely in my lane, so Mustang's ride comfort is irrelevant if a flatbed truck takes you out around a corner. Super cool, dude. Yeah, this is just a really well-sorted car, a really well-sorted car. And I think that's important because it is a rather expensive car. And we're gonna get to that later. And it's not necessarily a problem per se, depending on your viewpoint, but this is a worthy car, we'll say that, if you're gonna sort of price compare it to some of your other options in this range. What about one of the most endearing aspects of the Mustang? And that is its raucous buzzsaw engine note. Well, this is in regular mode. That was in regular mode, and it was at 70 miles an hour in the blink of an eye. I mean, just so much fun. It's got such a great character to it. Now, I'm gonna cheat a little bit. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna switch it into the saved mode, where I have saved, for your benefit, dear viewer, the exhaust in track mode. So the exhaust is now in track mode. The rest of the car is set up mostly in sport. It's just obliterating the eardrums of everybody around. Let's do it again. It's so awesome. Oh my goodness, that is an utterly joyous experience. Just so wonderful, so absolutely wonderful. You can hear it. It just permeates the whole car. The fact that this is a stock exhaust, it's stock. You could just order it this way. It almost seems like it shouldn't be allowed. It almost seems like you need like a permit. Like, I'm sorry, sir, can I see the permit for your Mustang's exhaust? Like, what more could you want from this thing? Take a listen to it, just revving. Just listen to this. Right? It's, oh my gosh. It is so much fun. It is so much fun to just listen to this thing wail up a mountain road. It's so much fun just to experience it, just to be a part of it. I get it, man. Oh my gosh, I get it. I get the Mustang thing. And not to mention that it's not just sound, there's also fury. It's got the power. That was 80. Like, that was 80 miles an hour with some downshifts. How could you not love this car? Sometimes you hear cars described of as like dogs, like a big cuddly dog or a big goofy dog or an approachable dog. This is like a well-trained German Shepherd that is your loyal companion. And then someone looks at it funny and it tears his throat out and spurts from his jugular vein. And you were like, I mean, I told you. Like it just becomes this other thing so quickly. And I think more so maybe than a regular Mustang GT, this Mach 1 with this sort of parts bin amalgamation of parts from the GT350 and the GT500, it just is something else entirely. And I think maybe what that is special. So clearly, the Mach 1 can handle itself in the mountains. And remember, this is not the one with the uprated handling pack, which costs $3,500 and mainly consists of wider, grippier rubber. For example, the rear tires are 315 width Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2s, as opposed to this model's 275 width Michelin Pilot Sport 4s. You also get a cool spoiler, and who doesn't like a cool spoiler, am I right? But do you really need all that? I mean, really, do you really need all that? Because to be honest with you, this Mach 1, as it is a damn good car to live with every day. Okay, so like now that the good stuff is out of the way, what more could you possibly want to know? The Mach 1 is a truly fantastic, do everything muscle car that looks retro fabulous, makes absolutely eargasmic sounds, and will impress your neighbors every time it returns to your house, not wrapped around a telephone pole. Case closed. Right? Oh, what's that you say? That you're a Mopar boy who's thinking of leaving the fold for something far less obese and that's much, much faster on anything but an aero straight road? So, like, what exactly do you want me to say to you? The Mach 1 is superior to the Challenger in quite literally every single way except straight line speed on a specially prepared surface. Which I mean is like cool and all if you're an idiot. So let's pretend that that argument isn't even actually an argument intelligent people would make. And let's look at the age-old question, Mustang or Camaro? Well, from a styling standpoint, I think it's Mustang all the way here. I know it's subjective, but the Mach 1 looks really great. Since the Mach 1 is barely even out at the time of the recording of this video, I got stopped a ton in the mountains by people who wanted to know more about the Mach 1. And it was universally praised for its good looks and cool color combo. Let me put it to you this way. If a Camaro of almost any sort, save the ZL1, was parked next to it, it would have been literally invisible. So this aspect is a little tougher to judge, but personally, I think the Mustang sort of scores again here. The Camaro SS1LE is packing the venerable LT1 small block V8, making 455 horsepower and around the same amount of torque. And the Mach 1 is sporting an uprated Coyote 5-liter V8, making 480 horsepower and 420 pound-feet of torque, and revving to a glorious 7,400 RPM. Sure, the Camaro's engine makes more torque, and I think a seat of the pants perspective would really make them feel about even, to be honest with you. But the Mustang's sort of buzzsaw bellow as it rips to its redline, that puts it over the top for me personally. Oh, and before you accuse me of being biased, remember, I own a C5 Corvette, and I have been a devoted GM fanboy for nearly my entire life, worshiping at the altar of the Chevy small block. So yeah, shut it. I'm not biased at all. This engine is freaking awesome. And the performance is not just under the hood either. The Mach 1 has magnetic shocks as well as a Torsen limited slip differential. Its stiffened suspension is mounted to the GT350's front and rear subframes, and the Mach 1 borrows liberally from its bigger brothers, the 350 and the GT500. It also has enhanced cooling in a number of many cooling places, as well as, frankly, enormous front Brembo brakes. If you get the manual, you get the Tremec 6-speed as opposed to the Getrag 6-speed found in lesser Mustangs, which is good because the Tremec is better. Oh, and it features rev matching as well as no-lift shifts, if you're into that sort of thing, which also helps the Mach 1 hit its 0 to 60 time of about 4.1 seconds, despite weighing 3,900 pounds.
Lay off me, I'm starving!
Inside, it's no contest. Neither the Mustang nor the Camaro have the best interior materials, but the Mustang wins with sort of better textures, incredibly comfortable and somewhat convincing leather seats, as well as a much cooler digital gauge cluster. I absolutely love the digital gauge cluster here. And while, if I'm being honest, the center screen for sync is a little small by today's standards, these comfortable base seats, as well as the digital gauge cluster, more than make up for it, in my opinion. And to be honest with you, famously, the Camaro has pretty awful visibility all around, and the Mustang doesn't really suffer from any such limitations. Plus, this particular Mach 1 has heated and cooled seats, a heated steering wheel, and a Bang & Olufsen sound system, making it downright cushy if you're driving back and forth to work. So the Mach 1 drives incredibly well, even in base performance trim when equipped with a 10-speed automatic. It has compelling creature comforts, and it looks the absolute business, especially in fighter jet gray.
Talk to me, Goose.
So we're all done here, right? Everybody, pack it in. We're good to go? We all finished? Well, not quite. There are two things you need to be aware of before you plunk down your hard-earned money on a Mustang Mach 1. The first is that the Mach 1, as you see it sitting here behind me, without the $3,500 handling pack, costs nearly 60 grand. That's a lot. Like, for real. That's a lot of money. To put that into context, a sort of similarly spec'd Camaro SS1LE can be had in the low 50s, let's say around 52, 53 grand. A Toyota Supra costs about 56 grand, and the lavishly praised BMW M2 Competition costs exactly the same. Yikes. Yeah. Look, I've always told you guys that I will try to give you the most unbiased information that I can. And if I am being biased, I will be completely straightforward and honest with you guys. The Mach 1 is a fantastic machine. It's loud, it's fast, and it's fun. But I am a simple middle-class teacher, and I wouldn't dream of spending 60 grand on a car. Who am I kidding? I couldn't spend 60 grand on 2 cars without first very carefully considering what I was doing. If you want an excellent all-around machine that can take you back and forth to work, can still take the kids to practice and or their various hobbies, and at the end of the week, on a weekend, it can still give a mountain road all it could handle, you should absolutely get a freaking Mustang Mach 1. It's nicer and more well-equipped than the Camaro. It has more usable space than the Supra, still probably more usable space than the M2, and based on everyone's reactions when I was up on the mountain, it oozes presence in the same way that the Supra does. No, the Mach 1 isn't perfect. It weighs a little too much, it has questionable plastics in places, and it's still at the end of the day a Mustang. But as a daily driver, for someone like me, an enthusiast dad who has responsibilities as well as dreams and desires of entertaining drives up at the tail of the dragon, the Mach 1 checks all the boxes. I think if you skip a few of the indulgences, as well as, if I'm being honest, the handling pack, and you can pick one up for less than $55,000, I think you'll find yourself a very, very compelling sports car. But your neighbors might not like you so much anymore. Guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. I tried to give the Mach 1 all it could handle in my week with it. I was very lucky to have the time to take it up to the mountains. It really is a fantastic vehicle, and it hits a nice sweet spot in that sort of sliding scale of responsibility and enthusiasm. We would all love to drive a Lotus Elise on a track stripped out with no air conditioning, and we also have family fatherly responsibilities. And the Mach 1 sits somewhere squarely in the middle between those two. So I really enjoyed it. I think it is a nearly perfect enthusiast dad car, and I would urge you, go take one for a spin, luxuriate in that glorious engine note, and if you're being honest with yourself and you try to strip away all of your biases, Mopar and Chevy guys, I'm talking to you. I am one of you. I am a GM fanboy, and I might just take the Mach 1 over almost anything else of its kind. It really is that good. Decide for yourself. And when you do, come back and let me know, was I right or was I full of shit? Because that's the fun of YouTube and the internet. You can leave anonymous comments full of hatred, or you could be nice, you could like, you could subscribe, you could ring the bell, and I will see you in the next review. Take care. Peace. Good time to get eaten by a bug. Well, I was gonna demonstrate its raucous buzzsaw engine note, but then I got behind someone driving a, what is this, a Dodge Nitro? Remember when that was a thing? Ugh.